Boundaries do not need to be barriers. Boundaries are simply you setting up your liberty, your freedom.
Originating from deep inside the Rocky Mountains, transported through the power of the internet, and arriving inside your tiny earbuds. It's the Appraiser Coach Podcast.
Minisode.
Welcome back to another Minisode, everybody. Dustin Harris hanging out with you. This one, of course, is sponsored by Synapse. Synapse is helping to support all of your adjustments in your report. How would you like that, folks? Everything you do is supported. I know we're supposed to be doing it all the time. Synapse will help you to do so. Check them out by going to spark4appraisers.com and clicking on the Synapse button. All right, folks, I want to talk about something that you're intimately familiar with, and most of us have problems with it. It's boundaries. What are your boundaries? Are you setting up boundaries? Some of you don't like boundaries. Some of you wish you had more boundaries. I want to share with you, let's put it this way. I'm not going to go into detail, but recently I put down some pretty heavy boundaries when it came to my life, my work, my hours, where I spend my time. And it felt good. It felt really good because the decision that I made to set down these boundaries will affect at least months, if not years, in the future. And folks, that feels good. I don't need to go into detail. It's not important to the story, but I will share with you an analogy. Years ago, I took a motorcycle trip with my daughter. In fact, it was we've always taken a 12-year trip with each of our kids. At least I have. So Dad takes the 12-year trip with the kids, and I've taken each of them as they've turned 12 on some type of a little adventure. My wife takes them on a graduation trip when they graduate from high school. Information you don't need to know, but this was our 12-year trip with my oldest, my daughter, and we traveled on motorcycle from our home in Rigby through Yellowstone National Park, over to Cody, Wyoming, back through Teton National Park and home. And it was an amazing trip. It was one I will remember forever. And one of the things that we did on that trip was we stopped at the Cody Dam. Now, Cody, Wyoming is located off the east side of Yellowstone National Park. It's a beautiful area, wonderful for riding motorcycles, by the way. The Beartooth Highway up in that area is one of the most beautiful switchback highways in the world. And on a motorcycle, it is just incredible, amazing. But we stopped at the Cody Dam. I've never been there. I'd been to Cody before, but I'd never been to the Cody Dam, and we just took a pit stop there. And if you can imagine, well, if you've ever been to the Hoover Dam, this is very, very similar to the Hoover Dam. Now, not in size and scope, obviously, or else it would be as famous. But it's amazing. I don't know how tall the Cody Dam is. I should have looked it up before I started recording. Somebody's going to jump on the comments and tell me, but I would guess at least 200 feet, if not taller. At least it seemed like it to me. And you stand up on top of this dam, and there's this little tiny creek down below you. And, of course, the reservoir behind you that the dam is creating. It was an exhilarating experience to stand there. Now, my daughter is 12 years old. And granted, she's mature and she can be trusted and everything else, but I'll tell you, as a parent, I was certainly glad for the fence that was along that dam. It was a long drop down, folks, and I don't do well with heights. And especially when I don't have any control over those around me, meaning I'm okay with heights, and I say okay loosely, right? I'm okay with heights when it comes to myself and the control that I have. But when I've got kids around me, I feel responsible for those kids. And, sometimes kids do dumb things. I don't know if you knew that or not. I have 4 of them. Not dumb kids, but kids that do dumb things. And it can be nerve-wracking as an adult, as a parent, to be there and responsible for a child and know that there is danger afoot, but grateful for the boundaries that were there. Now, some might look at that fence and say that it is a stifling thing, that it's keeping them enclosed. But folks, I see that as something keeping them protected, right? I don't feel it being constraining, but boundaries can be protecting, okay? And I want to get into that when we get back from the break. But first, I want to pause and remind you of a great sponsor here, a great company, helping to support your adjustments. Folks, I want you just for a moment to imagine that you get that dreaded letter in the mail, and you now stand before your state board, and one of the questions they ask you is, where did you get that dollar per square foot adjustment? Do you have an answer for that? Well, you do if you are regularly using a great program called Synapse. Folks, you need to check out Synapse. It is an absolute amazing program, very easy to use, does not take long at all. Check them out. Go to spark4appraisers.com and click on the Synapse button. All right, folks, welcome back. You should know this about me. If you've listened for any amount of time, you know that I like to push boundaries. I'm not one that likes to live inside a cardboard box. And if you tell me that I can't do something, well, hold my beer. I'm going to find a way to do it, and especially when it comes to business. In fact, a lot of the things that I teach inside my coaching programs are legal, moral, ethical, but absolutely outside the norm. So boundaries for me are there to be pushed, but today's episode is about how you personally can set up boundaries, which will actually allow you more freedom. A lot of times people think of these boundaries as barriers, okay? And I want you to start thinking about your boundaries differently, okay? Years ago, let me tell you a true story. Years ago, my wife and I built a home that had a third car garage that we turned into my office. And you would walk through a mudroom to get to the office. So imagine, I don't know, probably a 14-foot by maybe 22 feet long office. We had several desks in there. It was back when we had a brick and mortar, if you will, meaning everybody came into the office. It was not a virtual office. And I had 3 or 4 people working for me, and they would come and go as they needed to. There was an exterior door. But the door between the office and my home was through a mudroom. And it was a bit of a boundary. It was a bit of a barrier, if you will. And I would think about that psychologically the same way. I set up a boundary, a barrier, because it was very easy for me to slip out of the house in the evening and back into the office. And of course, when you slip back into the office, you slip back into work. I didn't want to do work in the evenings. I wanted to be off. I wanted to be able to spend time with my family. I wanted to be done for the day. Now, with some exceptions, and I think there's an important principle there as well, with some exceptions, I was able to successfully navigate and set up those boundaries when it came to work and home, even though work and home were physically, literally tied together with wood and sheetrock. Now, folks, there is a lesson to be learned there. The boundaries that you set up when you lock the door at 5:30 and quote-unquote commute through the mudroom into your main home. These are boundaries, but they're not barriers. In fact, they did the exact opposite. And I think that's the lesson that I would like to give you today, help you to remember, help you to maybe think, where are your boundaries? Many of us, being self-employed, will end up at work constantly. I deal with this on a regular basis when it comes to my coaching clients. We'll be sitting there and I will ask them how many hours they think that they work during the week. And they're always going to say 40 hours, right? And then when I start to challenge them, well, how often do you find yourself back in the office in the evenings? How about the weekends? Are there boundaries in place that keep you free? Here's the lesson for today. Again, boundaries do not need to be barriers. Boundaries are simply you setting up your liberty, your freedom. When it comes to my personal life, I'm going to protect my liberty. You can throw money at me and you can say, I'm going to pay you more to work harder, right? But I am at the point in my life that I'm tired of working harder. I'm more about working smarter so that I can spend fun time, play time, quality time with my family. Folks, think about your boundaries. Think about where you are. What have you set up? And more importantly, here's the question of the day. What do you need to set up in order to have some semblance of a better life? I can help you with that. I can help you with many things through my personal coaching program. Please reach out to me. Find us on the web, theappraisercoach.com.
You've been listening to the Appraiser Coach podcast with Dustin Harris. If you like what you hear, please give us a 5-star rating and post a short review on iTunes. For more in-depth insider information on how you can make more money as a real estate appraiser, visit theappraisercoach.com and sign up for the All-Star team today. Thanks for joining us. And now, get out there and create some value.